Welcome to The Writer's Dream. Our show is a show that features writers, how they write their books, how they publish their books, and how they market their books. We are found on Facebook, and you can find our shows on YouTube. Please visit either one of those sites, especially Facebook, and if you have any questions, we would be happy to try to answer them. My name is Linda Frank. My pen name is Linda Maria Frank, and I write the Annie Tillery Mysteries. Today's guest is Orel Protopopescu.
Hi.
And we rarely ever have a guest with so many different writing genres. And I'd just like to read for you some of the things that Orel has done. She has a book called 1,000 Peaks, Poems from China. And that has a New York Public Library book for the teenage winner. She was a winner for that. Many of her books are award winners. She has also written Thelonious Mouse. And Thelonious Mouse is your latest, yes?
Yes, my most recent picture book, yes.
Picture book. And so basically you have poetry books, and then you have children's picture books, and then you have adult poetry books.
Yes.
Let me go. There's The Perilous Pit, which is a New York Times Best Illustrated Picture Book, now an app from Orel.
Yeah, Orel Incorporated. Yes, AURYN. And they also reissued, since Lulu learned the Can-Can, my very first picture book as an app for the iPad as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and we have 2 honorable mentions in Oberon contests in 2006 and 2007, judged respectively by Pulitzer Prize-winning poet Louis Simpson, and Daniel Moran. First prize in Oberon 2010 for listening to my favorite things from the best of John Coltrane.
Yeah, I'm holding this up. I don't know if I'm facing the right way.
I think
but
this way.
This way. Yeah,
We lost you.
This was the prize-winning poem, and it's in Oberon magazine. And here's the honorable mention from Louis Simpson, a Pulitzer Prize-winning poet who just very recently died. A very distinguished American poet, gave me an honorable mention in this issue, 2006.
So you're really a poetess. And the last one I have is Since Lulu Learned the Can-Can.
That was my very first picture book about an ostrich who couldn't stop doing the can-can.
So my question for you, congratulations, by the way, on all of these awards and all of these different wonderful books. How are you able to jump from one genre to another successfully? Well,
I mean, all of us contain within ourselves everything we've ever been. So we've all been children. We've all, if we make it this far, we're adults, we're parents, grandparents. I'm a grandmother now. And all of those people I used to be are still in me. And I think all my poems, all my books, they come from my love for this world that we're so lucky to inhabit. And I think it's about falling in love. You can fall in love with an adult, you can fall in love with a child, you can fall in love with an idea, with the beauty of the world. And that love sparks something in me, and then I'm compelled to write something, to share it. And I never know when I get up in the morning, am I going to write something for children or adults that day? It's really, sometimes I know if I'm working, of course, on an ongoing project, but if I'm starting something new, I don't know where that tingle, that response to something is going to come from and what it's going to spark. And it's a process of discovery.
That's incredible. Yeah. Now, how old were you when you started to write?
Oh, I was a child. And I have to say, my mother was a third-grade teacher, and I used to show her my efforts in doggerel rhyme because I was such a wordsmith as a kid. I thought if you could just make things sound good and put rhymes at the end, that would be a poem. And my mother was a little more critical than maybe I had been with my own children. And she would say, well, you can do better, or try again, or something. So I didn't feel so encouraged by her, I have to say, except that she gave me such a love of reading and books, and that's where it all came from. But then in high school, I had some wonderful writing teachers, and I wrote a poem that was published in the school literary magazine, and a British journalist saw it. And I got the highest praise I've ever had for my writing when I was 13 years old. She published an article. She was touring the US. She was reading literary magazines from high schools all over the country. And she dubbed me a simple poetic genius.
Wow.
And it was amazing. And you would think that would have made me feel wonderful. It did for a brief period of time until I got the worst criticism I ever had in my life, which was from a poet whose workshop I took in college, and I was 17, it's only 4 years later. And he told me, "You have fantasy, Miss Odenov, but no imagination," which is something I wouldn't tell a student, even if it were true, and it's never true. Everybody has imagination.
Do you think he was jealous?
No, I know. I think I was really writing bad poetry at the time. And I think he didn't understand what I was capable of, and I didn't either. But the curious thing is that what sticks with you? The high praise or the condemnation? What sticks with you is the condemnation. Yes. And unfortunately, I decided then and there I wasn't a poet. And I didn't write poetry for decades until I met Claire Nicholas White, who's a wonderful poet. She's now 87, she's still writing, she's still prolific. She's written memoirs, she's written novels, and she showed me that I could write poetry. And we became good friends, and we still meet every week with our writing group, and I'm still writing poems. And she founded Oberon Poetry Magazine with the Oberon Foundation. And not only have I gotten published in Oberon, but independent judges who come and they read the poems anonymously have awarded me prizes in this magazine. Louis Simpson, who won the Pulitzer Prize, Louis Azakov, who won a major poetry award this year, gave me first prize in Oberon in 2010. First prize among many, many poems. I don't know how many they get, but hundreds, possibly even thousands, all over the country people submit, all over the world now.
So the lesson is that you from what I'm listening to, is that the damning part of criticism sticks with you, but you were able to overcome it because you got the support
of friends. And all my life, you know, to paraphrase Tennessee Williams, I've always relied on the kindness of my friends, not necessarily strangers. And I think it's so important because when we write, we're generally alone, and having a supportive community is essential. So anyone who aspires to write for children, for instance, should immediately join the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And by the way, my newest picture book, Thelonious Mouse, won the Crystal Kite Award as the prize-winning book for the New York Metro region, which is a highly competitive region, from the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, just this year. And that's an award that my peers gave me. That means all my fellow writers and illustrators voted for this book.
Yeah, well, that's very encouraging. That's where I met you. I met you at a meeting of Long Island children's writers and illustrators. And I was very impressed because it's different from a couple of other organizations I belong to, where actually you sit and you write and you criticize each other's writing, and it's very constructive. I've never been involved in that because, as I said, I'm not a trained writer. I didn't start as a writer. I was a science teacher for years and then decided to write mystery stories. So this is all very new to me, and it's, I'm glad that I waited so long because the criticisms that I get don't bother me as much as they would if I were younger.
Yeah, well, I was one of the founding members of the group, and we are not a chapter of the national group, SCBWI. We are just our own group. I got the Crystal Kite in New York from the Metro New York chapter of the SCBWI, which is a chapter of the national group. But our Long Island group has a policy. We welcome anyone who wants to join us. And people come with all different varying levels of ability. But everybody who comes and who faithfully comes and takes the criticism to heart and goes home and rewrites, because writing is rewriting. It's not writing. And that's the part I actually enjoy the best. Once I've got the idea out there, which is the hard part for me, playing with it is for me fun.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
And once you get the storyline, that's the hard part, is to get it all to mesh and to come out right at the end, and then to go back is more fun, because then you look at your characters and what they're saying.
Yes, but we had plenty of people who came who were shocked that people didn't immediately say, "We love it, go publish it," and then they never came back. Yeah. But those who stick with it, I've seen people grow, I've seen people develop. It's wonderful. It's a very nurturing environment.
Yes.
And at the same time, we tell the truth. We say exactly how we feel.
And that's good, because an editor is going to do, it's going to do a more harsh job on you.
Yes.
than the supportive group that you belong to. I notice, of course, the whole thing with writing is, okay, you write something, it's very good, you get it published, or you win an award, but the hard part about getting out there is the marketing. And I noticed that you have moved into the world of applications for iPad.
Yes, and this is something, the marketing, I'm terrible at it. I'm really a novice. I'm learning now, but they say every author has to be, you know, their own marketer. And I'd really rather just stay home and write, frankly, but you have to do it.
Yes.
So I'm trying to educate myself to do it.
Let me take those books from you, and we're going to show our audience this beautiful application that's been done.
Yeah, we are in the process of launching a spring bouquet of poems. Let me open this. Okay, it's called, can you see it if I hold it this way?
Yes, point it to it, that's
that
camera.
Okay, it's called A Word's a Bird.
There you go.
And that's the title page. And it's based on a poem I wrote, A Word's a Bird. A word's a bird you share.
A little bit, and then look at that. Yeah,
okay.
Good. That's good.
That flutters through the air in any weather, and the notes it sings make unseen wings feather. And those unseen wings are the wings of the child's imagination. And we have, with the poems, there are interactive glossaries that not only define terms, but explain that a word and a bird can both flutter through the air, and the word
hold it straight.
I'll hold it straight. I'll open up the April poem. You see it's beautiful watercolor.
A shoot's a flute you hear, when a breeze is blowing near a band of flowers, a sweet whistling.
Okay, I'll stop the poem there, and maybe you can't quite hear all the words, but it's a shoot's a flute you hear, when a breeze is blowing near a band of flowers, a sweet whistling that calls for spring showers. And before we see the spring showers, I just want to show you a feature of this. These shoots actually sing. You can play chords, two together. So I played a little tune, and these ducks will sing it back now. Yeah. And now the spring shower will come, and the mother duck will protect them. And the child can always reread the poem on this little screen, like a Japanese screen, a kakemono. Now I'm going to gently close that and just show you what May looks like. You hear the bees, you hear the trees. They're all based on rhymed metaphors. So this one is a bloom's a room you seek when you want to sneak a peek at nectar sippers. And if I touch nectar sippers, you see an explanation of what are the nectar sippers. Words like robust are explained. Words like pollen. So there is a lesson about nature embedded in this. We even explain the metaphor, a bloom's a room. We explain that a bloom is another word for flower, and that when it's open, it looks like a little cozy room for the bees, and that the yellow center is like a rug. So it's not just defining terms, but it's making the metaphor explicit so the child can understand it. And we think of this as an app a child can grow on, because my 2-year-old grandson loves this. I mean, he loves just touching the flowers and seeing the bees inside. When you open, one is sleeping, one is eating, and this little one over here is waving at you. He eventually, if you try a few times, he will eventually fly away. There he goes. Okay, and if you touch this flower, you get a little worm that comes out, and the cardinal eyes it, and then the little worm goes back. Doesn't want to get eaten. And
no violence.
If you touch the cardinal, you get the song, the actual song of the northern cardinal. So that's April and May. And they're all rhyme metaphors. We're working right now on June, and the spring bouquet will come out.
Well, this is,
Yeah.
it's so beautiful. The animation is absolutely beautiful. And I have my son has a 4-year-old, and I certainly am interested in when it comes out. He'll love it.
Well,
He'll love it.
the artist is extraordinary. It is Jeanne de Sainte-Marie in Paris. And this is her first app for iPad, but she's a very skilled watercolorist who's done many books for children. And what she's doing in this is extraordinary. And then we have animators who have to work from her drawings to animate. They're programmers. It's very complicated.
Yes, it is very complicated.
Production, yes.
So dovetailing into the ideas of marketing, this is, of course, going to be a great marketing success, because these are the kinds of things that children really,
Yes.
this is what they do now.
Yes.
It's just like my books have to be made into ebooks. I'm in the midst of doing a digital audio book for an iPod, because that's what children and young adults read from.
Yeah.
So, you know, we like to have the books in our hands, but they like to have it on their electronic device. I think that's brilliant.
Well, I hope there's room for all kinds of books, and I don't certainly want digital to be the end of paper books. I adore paper books. This production is coming from a company in Paris, Actia Luna, and it's a young startup. And we are doing, I forgot to mention, we're simultaneously issuing it in French and English. And I've actually done the French translations myself. I have a background in translation because I worked with my friend Siyu Liu on this book, 1,000 Peaks, Poems from China. And this is the one that you mentioned had gotten an award from the New York Public Library. And I was particularly gratified by a reviewer who said this book could only have been done by someone with a profound knowledge of English and Chinese.
Wow.
Now, I don't know a word of Chinese. Siyu has a profound knowledge of Chinese, and I have perhaps less profound knowledge of English, but together we did this book because we communicate well and we're good friends. Now, French I do know quite well, so I was able to do the French translations myself, but I had a lot of help from native speakers. I kept emailing them to friends, and my friend Claire White is also a quasi-native speaker because she also spoke Dutch at home. And she helped me as well. And so, because there are things that I think sound perfectly fine in French that a native speaker can say, well, you could say that, but it's a little awkward. And those kind of nuances you don't know unless you're a native speaker.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're lucky that. But I think this is going to be a huge success.
Well, it depends on the marketing, and the problem is you can have something magnificent like this, and yet if people don't know it's there,
Well, I agree.
that's the problem. And marketing costs a lot of money,
Yes, it does.
and we're not Disney.
Yeah.
So, and we have dreams for more things we can add. Right now we're launching a spring bouquet, but we can envision the winter, the fall, the summer bouquet to come. And I've written all of these things. They exist. But the production costs are such that right now we're doing spring. If we could find sponsors, if we could find, or even if we sell enough of the spring bouquet, there's the potential for doing the rest.
So you have no sponsor for this yet?
No.
In other words, you're just making the application, but nobody's bought it.
We are partners. And so we are full partners, the illustrator, the producer, and
But you have to find someone like Disney or like, I don't know much about the
I'm not
applications.
so sure we need, first of all, I don't think so, because those would be our competitors. And
all
though
right.
it sounds outlandish to imagine we're competing with Disney when they'll do an iPad application and spend millions of dollars on it, you know. This is costly by our standards, but certainly not by Disney standards. No, I'm looking into the potential with poetry foundations or, you know, groups that might have an interest. And also in terms of, and we also, we're enlisting the help of some marketing students at Stony Brook who might make this a real-time project. I talked to a professor there. And also I've been looking at French-American websites as well. And possibly I can do a program at the New York Public Library that in the programming department to introduce it to children. And also I use it, I forgot to mention that I also wrote a book for teachers, Metaphors and Similes You Can Eat.
And you're a teacher as well.
Well, part-time, I teach writing workshops.
Yeah, but you're a teacher.
And yeah, in fact, I'm going to Paris in April to be at the American School of Paris again. It's a repeat. They've invited me back. And Marymount school in Paris, has a branch in Paris. I'll be doing poetry workshops there. So I published a lot of my students. I don't know if I can hold this up.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's see if she has. Yeah, she's got it.
Yeah, I've got it. This was published by Scholastic, and you can see many poetry lessons that I created over the years, and my students are published in here.
But I have a suggestion for the application. Look into distributors, people who distribute the applications.
Well, Apple is our distributor. Everybody, you
so
get
then
into the Apple Store, but you can be in the Apple Store, but your placement in the Apple Store also is significantly influenced, from what I understand, by who you are.
Well, I'm sure that's everywhere.
Visibility,
The famous people get all the press and they don't need it. I never could figure that out.
That's how it is.
It is. That is exactly how it is.
Yes.
But there must be some ways. I think your marketing people, your marketing students, there must be some way to get to the top of the list. The way you get to the top of the list in Google.
Yes.
Yeah, there's got to be a way to do that.
Right. But, you know, I did contact a marketer that I had worked with in the past who I like very much. The problem is the really good marketers may be already engaged working for competitors. And even though they wouldn't feel threatened by a small company, a startup, the marketers don't like conflict of interest. So if they're already working for a major enterprise like Disney, they're not going to take on any competitor. So that's a problem.
This is the greatest challenge, I think.
Yeah.
When you're a writer and you have good stuff,
yeah.
The challenge is in the marketing.
Let people know you're there, yes. Yeah.
Now, you write poetry for adults, and I know you have a book that you truly love. Would you like to read something from it?
Yeah, I can read maybe the title poem. I could start with that, and then maybe the one that won the first prize in Oberon. The cover art, by the way, it's a pastel portrait of, do I hold it this way? Yeah. It's a pastel portrait of my younger daughter, Nuria, and it was done by her friend, Nicholas Dorka. He was only 24, 25 when he did this remarkable likeness.
Beautiful.
And I used it as the cover because Nick died in a car crash that year. And I wanted to memorialize his talent, this lifelike pastel he did at such a young age, and he was an art teacher as well. He was, in fact, on his way to teach an art class at the university. So, and it seemed appropriate for a book where the title poem is What Remains. And when the book was accepted by Finishing Line Press, this hadn't happened with Nick, and I didn't know what I was going to use as a cover. And then when this horrible, tragic accident happened, I decided to use it. The poem, What Remains, is about looking back at yourself as a child. And in this case, I'm looking back at myself as a young teenager in Hempstead, where I used to ride my bike after school, even 30 miles to Manhattan sometimes, and wondering what happened to that person and what they left behind. What remains? Where is the girl who forgot to eat, who thought nothing of riding a bike 30 miles to Manhattan after school, who recited poems in the grass by candlelight, chanted hymns of praise to trees and stars, read books as she wrote them in her sleep, who sang as she washed away grief, danced floors clean with rags on her feet. She left me a pile of words to play with, unfinished novels, abandoned scripts, notes in the margins of dusty books, embroidered blouses, miniskirts, old photos lovelier than she knew, letters so young they make me weep, a family of friends, a house by the sea, the only man who still sees her in me. And that's my husband, Sherban, who I've known since I was 17. And when I speak about washing away grief, I lost my mother when I was 16 to cancer. So
my best friend did too.
And I have to say, when you have hard times in your life, and when you live through tragic events, and I've lost dear friends also.
Me too.
We all have, yeah. Having an art, having words, having a vital inner life is
salvation.
absolute salvation, because people are mortal, and it's wonderful to have friends, and it's wonderful to have family, and I'm blessed in those ways. But your salvation when you're alone and those people aren't around is that inner life, as you know so well. Anyone who writes knows. And that poem won honorable mention at my first major poetry prize by a prize-winning poet, Louis Simpson, a Pulitzer Prize winner, a great American poet. And so that was like being dubbed, you know, by a prince or a king. And then I won a prize from another wonderful American poet, Louis Asikoff, who just won a major poetry award last year. And this was the top prize in Oberon for this poem about listening to John Coltrane's music.
Yes, go ahead, because we're running out of time.
We're running out of time.
But read it,
Oh,
please.
Listening to my favorite things from the best of John Coltrane. I never liked this silly song before I got hooked on the way brushes whisper to the drum heads as train dips and slides over the melody, teasing me with his horn, drawing me along the edge of the abyss where his star pulses. His notes appear and disappear like those slim, beautiful boys who played basketball in torn keds and leaned against the rough brick walls of the projects until their dark skins were scraped with comet trails. Some lost half-lives to heroin, to prison, to grief held back until they burst the way Coltrane explodes in my ears, horn chattering like a crazed parrot, shredding the melody and taking it up where he wails and climbs. When he drags it back, that annoying tune is a snake charmer's dirge, slower, sadder, older, wiser, like my old friends, sometime boys who shot for the stars and fell, leaving their music in my head. So I cry when, after taking me so far, after 13 eternal minutes, train knots a perfect loop of pure round sound, then strangles it.
That was great.
Thank you.
Orel, you have to come back.
Thanks.
You have to come back. There's
you.
so much more to talk about. Wonderful.